So to begin my project, I took this fleecy fabric softener plastic container, and then using an X-acto knife, I just cut off the top portion. This plastic container was super easy to do this with. I just followed the natural lines of the container, swooped down, and then back up around. You want to make sure that you're careful when cutting, and some residual fabric softener may leak out when you cut off the lid. Next, I'm going to take some craft paper. I have this on a roll here that already has tape attached to it, but then I'm also going to use extra masking tape just to seal it on. I'm scrunching it up to create like a really rough texture to cover my plastic. Because this is a shiny plastic, I want to make sure that I have some texture to my vase. So I'm just going to wrap the whole thing in this craft paper, and then I'm going to tape it on where I need tape to hold it in place. You don't have to be perfectly neat with this step. And then I'm going to come back in with my X-acto knife again and just cut out my handle. So just cutting it out there and then wrapping that again in masking tape just to make sure that all the plastic is covered. When I'm done with this, I'm going to create my paper mache. So I'm going to be using some old envelopes, junk mail that I had, and a little blender here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rip the envelopes up into tiny little pieces, and then I'm going to stick them into my blender. You can use newspaper, junk mail, whatever you want for this step. Then I'm going to add just a little bit of water just to soften the paper a bit before I turn on my blender. It does take a little while to blend the paper into a nice slurry paste, but once it's done, I'm just going to put on some gloves because this next part is a little bit messy, but this is what my slurry paste of paper looks like. Now it is a little bit wet. We're going to be using some Mod Podge just to give it that extra little stickiness onto my faux vase here. So I lay out the Mod Podge, and then I just grab a handful of the slurry and I just spread it around onto my plastic container. Now, like I mentioned, this step is a little messy. The paper is still a little wet, so you will notice that some of the wetness oozes out, but you just keep kind of patting it in around and on the plastic container, mushing it in until you're happy with it. I let it set for a full day to let this completely harden onto the plastic container, and this is my finished vase here. I decided to fill my vase with some natural bunny tails that just suit with my natural decor and aesthetic. I really hope that this project inspires you to get creative with junk mail and a plastic container that you may have lying around.
What I love about this project is that it's budget friendly. We're starting with a toilet paper roll. All right, so we are going to start with our toilet paper roll, and we are going to cut it down to about half this size. So I'm going to use some scissors. So now that we've cut our toilet paper roll in half, I'm going to be using this side here. We're going to set this aside for now because we're going to move on to the next step. So I'm going to be taking an X-acto blade, and I essentially want to create like a flat piece because this is going to be sitting on the ground and I don't want it to be unstable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my my X-acto blade and I'm going to extend it out, and I'm going to kind of start shaving part of this piece away. Okay, so now that this is able to stand on its own, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be attaching my toilet paper roll to the top. I want it to be directly over the base, so we want it to sit about right here. So I'm going to start by taking my glue and I'm going to go around the inside. I want it to kind of fall here. And I'm going to take my hot glue and kind of go around to the outside. And so I'm just going to continue to add glue around the surface, basically kind of completing the gap that I see in between the toilet paper roll and the foam round. All right, so now that this has been glued, I am still waiting for glue to dry a little bit, but we can start at the bottom of this and work our way up, so it should be set by the time we reach the top. Now I'm going to use an artist palette knife. I have kind of more of a wide spatula-esque one. But yeah, this is what I'm going to be using. So if we open it up, you can see it's pink. So I'm going to take a big heap of this and we're going to just start layering it on. And ultimately what I'm trying to create is a really solid surface. And I want to try and make the surfaces relatively even. But you don't need it to be perfect because we're going to be doing another step after this that's going to help kind of smooth the surface out. Once I've completed this, when we get a little further into this step, I'll walk you through some other pieces, especially when we come up here. But for now, we will just keep moving and I'll see you on the next step. So now we're at a point where we want to work our way towards the toilet paper roll. That's definitely a little more set. So it's kind of tricky. You're definitely going to get your hands covered in spackle. So don't worry, nothing bad's going to happen with spackle on your hands. But if you choose to do this with gloves, that makes sense. Now that this is dried a little bit, it's not fully dry, as you can see, it's still relatively pink. We can start tackling the top part of this. So we're going to do essentially the same thing, but I'm going to start by going over the exposed base of the toilet paper roll. So you can see I'm kind of covering it there. We want this to look kind of blended. We want it to look pretty seamless. And like I said earlier, it does not need to be perfect. We are going to be doing another step once this is all dry to really even out the surface and make it look really nice. So I let this dry for about 24 hours, and as you can see, it is completely white now. It's no longer pink. And we did the inside just so it looked pretty complete when you were looking at it from afar, or when you're looking at it closely. I just wanted it to look very cohesive and nice. So what I'm going to do now is I have a sanding block that I've already used. So the sanding block is a little dull, so I'm going to be using some 220 grit sandpaper. I'm going to wind it around the block. All right, now that we've sanded this down, we're going to wipe it off, and then we are going to take it outside and move on to our next step, which will be spray painting it. So here is the finished product of this high-end modern donut vase dupe, and I really love how it turned out. I think it looks great in my office, and I hope you feel inspired to try this project. Thank you so much for watching Home Talk, and I will see you next time.